be here with you today. I have special guest Nathan May, old pro, friend of the show, friend of the company, here to basically bring you so much more valuable insights and knowledge about how to build your newsletters and how to grow more quickly. Today we're going to be talking about how to scale your newsletter more quickly, more efficiently, faster, smarter with AI tools. This is something that's really close to my heart. While I don't use AI specifically for drafting content, I think that's usually people can really see through AI drafted content. We use AI extensively over here at Beehive in order to basically multiply ourselves and basically as a force multiplier where in the past in kind of the Web 2 days you need an entire team to scale a company to this level, and now because we have been AI powered, we're able to do a lot more with just at this point I think we're 12 people, and so lots of ways in which you can work smarter, not harder, to make your life easier. And I'm super excited to hear what Nathan has to offer today. I'm sure he's got a lot that I haven't thought about, and so I'm excited to learn, and I hope you are as well. As we get started, before I pass it over to Nathan to do his intros and kick things off, would love to hear in the chat, or love to see where people are calling in from, and kind of just an idea of where you guys are at in your journey, whether you're starting out, whether you're kind of been publishing for a while, just so we can get a temperature for the room. We're really excited we love to connect with folks and meet them where they're at. And so if you could just drop that in the chat, we're monitoring, and we'll use that to adjust our presentation. But without further ado, while you guys go and do that, I'm very, very proud and pleased to be able to introduce my friend Nathan May, founder of the Feed Media, to kick things off with us.
Good stuff. Thanks, AJ. Excited to be back for another workshop session. Let me go ahead and share my screen really fast. We'll do the usual. The deck, hide, full screen.
Real quick, while people are doing this, I'd also love to see how many people here is this their first event, or if you've come to some of our other virtual events, would love to just see kind of a show of hands. Like, is this your first experience with us? Have you come to a bunch of these, just to get us to get an idea of kind of who we're talking to as well? But yeah, while you're doing that, Nathan can get started.
Cool. All right, so I want to talk to you guys about the AI playbooks that we found to be useful for newsletter operators across multiple different, let's call them disciplines, right? Paid ads, content, nurture and monetization. But super quickly, I'll go through the boring stuff, which is like, who are me? Like, who am I? Why should you listen to us? So we're an agency. We partner with a lot of big newsletter brands. We help grow newsletters. We help convert those readers into revenue. You can see some of the folks that we work with on the right-hand side here. Lots of really cool personal brands, some of the biggest newsletter companies in the US. And we really do three things. One is helping folks actually grow high-quality subscribers. We've driven millions of subscribers, some of the biggest pubs. We do some work with sponsorships, primarily on the B2B side, to help folks monetize. And then if you have any kind of service or product that sits behind your newsletter, we build and nurture in the funnels that help actually convert readers into customers. So short TLDR on us. And because we've done all that work, we've learned a ton. And I've tried to share as much of that as I can openly across other sessions that we've done here with EJ and with Beehive. So we've done our whole playbook on scaling with paid ads. We did a $270,000 launch on a 15,000 person newsletter. You guys should go check that out. And then the most recent one before this on how founders, really every founder, in my opinion, should have a newsletter to help convert traffic into basically clients or customers for your business. And this will be our fourth one on how to use AI in your newsletter. I found AI to be extremely high leverage and useful for three things that we do. And those are the three things I'm going to cover. So number one is paid ads. Not all the time, but we've been very fortunate to work with a couple brands, the Run Down the Points guy, that are doing six figures a month in ad spend on Meta profitably. And it has been immensely valuable for us to use AI to help write scripts and copy, tools like ArcAds, which I'll talk about, to help draft videos that could be UGC videos, user-generated content videos for ads. And it's really opened up the volume and the pace that we can test with some of these larger newsletter brands. On the content side, we'll walk through each of these in more detail, over the next, call it 30 minutes or so. This helped me write a newsletter actually very recently. Not the final thing, because I agree with EJ. I don't think I haven't found that AI can completely, do your whole newsletter for you, but for a first draft for a newsletter called The Neuron, which is a longtime client of ours, and a newsletter that I almost acquired to actually write a newsletter on that acquisition very quickly after it happened, when I've got 1,000 other things going on. And then finally on product launches. So there's a newsletter by my friend Jesse Pujji called Bootstrap Giants. It has done over $500,000 of revenue on a 25,000 person list just from product sales. And using AI has helped us take what would traditionally be a 2-week process to do all these emails, these nurture emails that help convert readers into customers, and take those drafts to, let's call it a 2-day, a 3-day process. And then we can refine it, lets us launch a lot faster and spend more time on sales pages and other things that are more high touch, so that we can convert more people from the list. So I want to start with paid ads. How do we use AI for paid ads? Well, one of the first things that we do is use AI for research. So one mistake I found that a lot of newsletter operators make is that they want to run one type of ad, which is, learn how to XYZ in 5 minutes a day, right? Learn how to do AI, learn how to buy a business, whatever it is in 5 minutes a day. And those ads can work, but they won't get you the best CPL you could possibly have. They won't get you the best quality reader you could possibly have. What's actually more important in ads is to have one ad concept, one ad that talks to a really specific persona within your newsletter. So I'll use an example of Big Desk Energy, right? Which is Tyler Danks, the founder and CEO of Beehive's newsletter. You've got people on that list who are venture capitalists, people who are at a big company and who want to start a startup, people who are bootstrapping their startup, right? They're not raising any funding. People who are raising their Series A, right? Those people are going to want to read for very different reasons. And so taking something like ChatGPT and actually teasing out who the different personas are, let you write more detailed ads. So here's something that we did, for instance, for Tyler. Often we'll take the highest open rate subject lines, comments we read in the newsletters, responses, especially free form responses, from surveys, email replies, high click-through links, and start dumping all of that into ChatGPT and prompt it with things like, hey, tease out, you can see in this prompt on the upper right-hand side, what are the benefits of the newsletter, right? What are the pain points that would cause somebody to read this thing? What are other things that somebody's tried to kind of get that same content fix? And it will tease out things that will make your newsletter unique that you can bring directly into the copy of your ads. One quick example for Tyler's newsletter, one of the reasons that people like it is it's super, super transparent. It's almost like a journal sometimes, right? I mean, Tyler will really talk about things that obviously are going well, but things that don't go well too. And I think people appreciate hey, there's a lot of content out there that gives me the how, the tactics, but like, I want to just sometimes you listen to good music, or maybe the My First Million podcast, one of my favorite podcasts. You want to kind of feel something, right? You want to walk away feeling invigorated after that. That's a big reason why people read Tyler's newsletter, and having that information at our fingertips has been very helpful for the ads. The next thing I want to tell you about is, how do you actually come up with ideas for concepts from organic social, right? So this is a really popular strategy in direct-to-consumer. Like, how do you go look at ads or even organic posts on Instagram or YouTube or Reddit and say, oh, well, these things have been upvoted or have been seen a lot of times. We actually think we could take that angle and use it in paid ads. So here's a great example of us doing that. This is a single ad you see on the left-hand side that drove over 25,000 subscribers for the Neuron. I'm not in all of the ads, but I happen to be the ICP for this one. So I did a little bit of the acting in this one. And so our insight, I'll walk how we got this insight in a second, but our insight was that a lot of people wanted to understand how to use AI to perform better at work. And the problem that they were having was not that they thought that like, hey, AI is going to take my job, right? It's going to replace me at work, but rather that somebody who is using AI and they're using it well, they're going to get the bonus over me. They're going to get the promotion over me. So I don't, I'm not worried about the replacement, but somebody who's being augmented with AI. And so our winning hook was like, hey, if you're not delegating research and PowerPoint to AI at work, you're going to be outperformed by the guy who does, right? And there's a very high spending winning ad. There were great quality readers that sat on the other side of that ad. And that ad came not from us, truly. It just came because we did the research. We found a viral Reddit thread that was on AI that told us it would work. And so you can see these things here, that dream outcome I talked about, perform better at work. You see that in the very first sentence, right? It's, I'm afraid of AI taking my job, but I think the main thing that's going to happen is it's going to accelerate my career, right? That's the dream outcome. what's the problem, right? They were worried people were, AI was going to take their job. At that point, we are kind of like, well, we don't think people believe that anymore. This was like an older post. And so he says, or she says, I'm not sure, at the very bottom, like, well, if you don't want to be left behind by AI, embrace it. Essentially talking about like, it's the people who use AI will be the ones who outperform you. And so we did a lot of that research for this original ad manually. Okay, we were going to Artificial, we were going to Singularity, we were going to all of the big AI related subreddits and trying to research these types of golden nuggets that we could bring into ads. Now our process is different. We do a bit of that manual work still, but there's a tool that we love called GigaBrain, and it's sort of like if anybody who's watching this either now or after knows Perplexity, which is sort of like AI enabled search. This is like Perplexity, but for Reddit. So I'll type in a prompt. So if you see number 1 there, I know it's a little small, but I'm saying, I'd like to understand the problems that white collar working professionals are having with AI that make them want to get better at it, right? What are their dream outcomes? What are their fears? What are the problems getting in the way of them becoming better with AI tools? And it is going to tease out a bunch of different Reddit threads. So top comments, top threads, and then it will also summarize what those people are saying. So in basically a paragraph, I can understand all the dream outcomes, all the problems, and if I want to go deeper, right, if I really want to see specific quotes from people, then it's very easy for me just to hover over. They have all these little tooltips that sit in there, hover over it, and it's going to blast open somebody's specific comment so we can grab specific language from that commenter to bring into ads. This significantly saves time for us, and it's led to a bunch of high-performing ad ideas, again, because we're using AI to augment how we technically do social listening for ad concepts. The next thing I want to talk to you about is AI-generated UGC. So these are 2 ads for the rundown on the left-hand side and then the points guy on the right-hand side. Both winning ads, both have spent a ton of money, and neither of the actors that we use in these ads are real. Now, the caveat I'll say, I'll talk about the tool in a second, when you're using these UGC, AI tools, you generally need to weave in what we call B-roll, right? So if you see on the left-hand side, he's going to talk for a second, right, and it's going to pull up kind of Claude and Zapier, right, all these kind of tools, this graphic that we created. You want to weave that in. You can't have somebody who's AI talking for the full 15, 20, 30 seconds of an ad. It's just not there yet. But that's okay. I mean, frankly, in ads anyway today, we don't have an actor talk the entire time anyway, right? We always want to be showing, not telling with your B-roll. And so from a how much has this changed our process from an editing perspective? I'd say, maybe we have to use 20%, maybe 20% more B-roll, but it's not so dissimilar. And so what this has helped us do is test more types of personas, so people who look different ways to match with different types of audiences very, very quickly and in a way that is fairly inexpensive for the client. The tool that has let us do that is called ArcAds. So there's different tools. There's RealFarm, there's Icon, there's all these different AI ads tools out there right now. For AI UGC, we find ArcAds to be our go-to. We can plug in a script here, and there's things you can do with ellipses and commas to change the intonation of the actors. But you basically go in and you get this huge catalog of hundreds of people that you can choose from. And transparently, I think maybe 20% of those are actors that we'll actually use that seem authentic, that seem real enough to use in ads. But that has helped us dramatically increase the rate at which we test. The last thing that I want to talk about before we move to the next section is what are other ways? So we looked at how do you pull from Reddit for organic social to inform ad concepts? Well, what about YouTube Shorts or Instagram Reels? One thing we'll quickly do to help ideate on a concept is we'll find things in our ICP, our ideal customer, ideal reader profile, that are really high performing content. So this is an Instagram Reel that you're seeing here on the left-hand side from Y Combinator, and it's to founders. And the hook is what are the biggest red flags for startup founders that you've interviewed? And so this is a very founder-focused hook, and this was for Tyler Dyke's newsletter, which is all founder-focused. And so we quickly wanted to iterate on, well, how could we do something like this that's for the newsletter? And so there's a tool that we love called Foreplay. So it's a SaaS tool that basically lets you save down ads as well as organic video content. and it will automatically transcribe anything that you see. So that on the right-hand side, you can see is, a 90-95% accurate version of this script. And so we can tease out that script and put it into Claude, which happens to be my favorite tool for generating copy. I find ChatGPT to be very good for research, very good for analysis. When you ask it to do copywriting, it feels a little bit stiff, even when you're priming it with your own writing, right? If I was going to give it my newsletters or my LinkedIn posts, it would still do an okay job, but not an amazing job. So we always use Claude. And so I've gone ahead and I've just popped in the script and I've said, hey, we're going to be brainstorming ad ideas based on the script of this successful Y Combinator video answering founder questions. Write a brief concept with hook ideas, script ideas, first focusing on the angle, and then once we select the angle together, you're going to write the actual copy. You'll write the script. And my principle for this is the number one thing that AI has helped us do is not like write our copy end to end and replace a bunch of people. It's gone, well, typically, if you were a, let's call it junior or senior creative strategist or junior creative strategist, you'd be doing a bunch of, first round hooks and copy and ideas for your senior creative strategists. Now this basically lets a junior creative strategist have their own junior creative strategist who's going to help them with the ideas, right? And they can play editor, not the first drafter. And that, because most people I find in copy, including myself, have a cold start problem. It's very hard to start with a blank page, right? And come up with something that you're really happy about. And that's where you tend to spend the most of your time in the beginning. It's how do you make that time as close to zero as possible so that you can begin iterating, right? All the success comes from iteration. So one other learning that we have had is the way that we're prompting Claude and ChatGPT. One of my favorite things to do is not actually to, in the very beginning, I'll type in a prompt to Claude, but I actually like to talk to Claude. If you download either that or the ChatGPT app, you can voice memo things. It will transcribe what you're saying really, really quickly, and it will respond based off of that. And I found that's a very natural forcing function to go from it's like when you prompt, it's like when you write an email, like something about the fact that you're typing things out, it makes you overly formal, right? It doesn't kind of make you playful in the way that maybe a conversation would. And if you really want to treat AI like an employee, like a partner, you want to keep that sort of softness, that informality. And so it's also just faster, frankly. And so I found a lot of the best copywriting comes from me just going back and forth with Claude, like I'm talking to a copywriter, and I do that by speaking to it. So you can see me do that here. I've said, it gave me a couple hooks. I said, I really like hook number 10. And here's why I liked it. And I like number 2. Could you do a couple more that are like this? And then it goes, cool. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, let me do all these variations for you. One thing that we also try to do is, this is sort of minutiae, but we find it's very useful to have multiple hooks tested with the same body copy, right? So the hook being the first, call it, 1 to 3 or 4 seconds in the video, what somebody's saying or what's showed on screen. And that's where most of the performance will come from the video, right? You might have hook A that has a $2 CPL, and hook B might have $1.50 CPL. It's very conditional on the hook. And so often, the way that we'll work with Claude is we'll say, all right, we want to test all these hooks, but we need to draft some body copy that no matter which hook you place with that body copy, it still makes sense, right? An actor can go through and read it all through, or we can edit it together, and it'll all seem like one contiguous video, without any kind of interruption. So that's just one quick thing that we do that's helped our workflows. And then finally, I'll have Claude structure this into a brief table format that we can now really start to work with. And so, for instance, for this one, we ended up writing 6 or 7 different hook variations. So I think we took 2 that Claude came up with. We replaced the third one. We added 4 of our own. But it was really helpful to have this format, right? To have this concept and idea that came from that organic social post first, and it saved us a lot of time doing it that way. Awesome. EJ, Tony, you still with me? Ooh, cool. All right, I'm gonna go over to newsletter content.
I'm right here. Is there anything that you would like me to add or to comment on?
No, you're all good. I always just I can only see my full screen, and so in the back of my head, I'm like, what is it? it's still recording. Everything going okay? So I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And they can't see Tony. So Tony's, for the people who are watching, we have a producer here who's our eyes in the sky and in our ear. So he was just giving us some feedback on what some of the chat is saying. So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, thank you guys so much. And keep the questions coming. I'm sure that he'll be happy to answer them at the end.
Cool. All right, let's hit newsletter content. So this is a fun one. So this is like a real scenario from 2 weeks ago. So one of our longtime clients, The Neuron, just got acquired by this big company called Technology Advice, and I wrote this post on it. And sort of the fun thing was, I was the other bidder on this big newsletter. I've known Pete and Noah for a long, long time, since they were probably, I don't know, 100, 150,000 subscribers, all the way to now. And so I wanted to write a long form newsletter article on this for my own personal newsletter. But it's like, I didn't know when the announcement was going to come out. And I've got my calendar's jammed up with all this stuff. And so I need to be able to write a high quality newsletter on that M&A process within a couple of hours so that I can publish it the next day, right? So it's got to be high quality and it's got to be fast, because my newsletter goes out to all these awesome people, that I admire, from Rowan to Tim, EJ's on there, right? Tyler, Chanel, all these folks. And so, I don't want, Tyler, I don't want EJ to open up one of my emails and go, all right, this sounds like it was written by AI. Like, what is Nathan, thinking? He sounds silly. So those were my sort of, my constraints, right? That was my sandbox. And so I went, all right, well, what's something I can do to make this really good, without compromising, or fast, I should say, without compromising on quality. And so, again, I don't recommend entirely writing a newsletter with AI. Use AI as the first drafter so that you can play editor, right? You can play head of the sort of newsletter content strategy, right? Rather than the junior person who's first doing the drafting. And so the first thing that I do in Claude, again, is I set up a project, right? So you'll have chats and then you'll have projects. Projects let you give information to Claude that is evergreen. It's always there. It will always take into account that information, no matter how many chats you have or what questions you're asking it. And so for me, for newsletters, I have a project set up only for my newsletter writing, which is different from the project I have set up for any LinkedIn writing. It's different from other projects I have set up for specific ad accounts that we work with, like Tyler Rowan. And so for this one, I said, all right, I give it its role, right? So your job, your role, is to insert your role here, whatever your version of that is. For me, it's expert editorial newsletter writer who writes in my voice for a newsletter and then insert your audience, right? So for me, I have a small private invite-only newsletter that is for the largest sort of media and newsletter operators in the US, right? So mine's like media execs and founders. That's my audience. And then I give it, hey, you should ingest and reflect on my tone, the structure of my sentences, and then I give it a little bit of my own sense of my style, which is I tend to be brief. My tone, I hope, who knows, but is authoritative, but it's often also story driven, and I tend to at least try to be casual or tongue-in-cheek. I don't like sort of overly formal. You're not going to catch Nathan in a suit and tie, right? Is how I talk about my writing, and then I give it a bunch of examples of other newsletters. It's not pictured here, but just other long format newsletters that I've wrote so that it understands my voice and can write like me. And then I do the same thing we did for ads, which is, all right, now I've given it some constraints. Now I kind of want to open it up. So I'm just pulling open my phone. I'm opening the Claude app. I'm hitting the little voice record button, and I'm just talking to it like it's my friend, right? So I'm saying, I won't read the whole thing, but it gave me a little draft. I was like, hey, this post is really good. I appreciate you putting it together. Now I want to get to this newsletter. Here's what I'm thinking about it. I want to tell people two things. Number one, how I feel about the acquisition. So it kind of sucks to lose an acquisition. I mean, this was, months ago now. There's a lot of time between when it happened and when the announcement was made, but it sucked at first. And then I'm giving it kind of the TLDRs, it did suck, and I want to be transparent about that. But then I also want to talk about, well, what's something that nobody's ever done? Nobody's ever lost M&A process and then gone, here's why the winner won, why they're so awesome. And by the way, if I spent, whatever, 7 figures, whatever, of my own money, here are the things that I would have done to grow this asset. And there were 4 things I talked about in that newsletter that were quite literally, if I had acquired the Neuron, would have been the things that I would have done to make a return on that investment. I thought, what a cool newsletter article that would be. And that's exactly the things that I'm telling Claude. And it's taking that, ingesting it, and doing a first draft. Now, the one important caveat I would make is you want to create steps in that draft. So I always ask Claude to create a outline rather than a final version first, just like you would if you were working with a copywriter, right? Like you wouldn't tell them just to draft your newsletter. You kind of go, all right, I want to make sure we're on the same page about how we're going to do this thing. And so here you have it kind of laying out, all right, some open ground rules, right? I can't share how much the acquisition was for. I can't share the plans of the buyer. I talk about, again, sort of the emotional journey of it. And then I talk about the 4 things that I would have done once I acquired the newsletter. And it's giving me the draft, and it did a really good job. This is almost precisely how I wanted to lay out the flow of that newsletter. The other thing I would do, I didn't do it here, but I often recommend is like let Claude or ChatGPT ask you questions if it's not sure about something, which is exactly what you would do, right? If you hopped on a call with your copywriter, you're like, hey, I'd like you to do a draft of this thing. That copywriter is probably going to ask you a couple questions, right? The mistake people make when they're using AI is they go, all right, what's this and this? Well, again, if you let the AI kind of solicit things from you, you'll end up with a better product, just like if you had an employee who was doing the same job for you. And so the net was really good. The draft, again, it required editing, after it initially wrote it, but it's not dramatically different. You can see on the left-hand side, I'm saying here the Neuron was acquired, right? Here's some ground rules, the stuff I can't share, so on and so forth. And on the right-hand side, it's pretty much like that. I add in this section here that starts with, for those who don't know, a TLDR on the Neuron, just because I don't assume everybody knows kind of the size of that newsletter, how it started, or that story. So that's some like context only I have, right? That I wanted to throw in there. But after that, you start with the 2 ground rules, which is the bolded section you see on the right-hand side. So that white screenshot, on the last, call it 20% of that screenshot. It picked up right there, and it was really, really strong. And I probably went from having to spend maybe typically 5 hours, on a newsletter to maybe 2, maybe 3, right? So you're talking about getting hours of your time back across every single newsletter edition you do. So you could do 2 newsletters, right? 2 newsletters in the time it took you to do 1. So it was a very high leverage for me. The other thing I think is a nice comparison. So what's the whole process flow, right, of like creating a piece of content like a newsletter, and like what it save you besides time? Well, like if you hired a ghostwriter to do all these things, so that you would do with Claude, right, training on writing examples, journeying ideas, the outline by interviewing you, which is typically what a ghostwriter would do. They would sit with you, they'd interview you on the things you want to talk about, and then they come up with a draft, and then they would help you edit and finalize it. Sure, they'll do the whole thing, but like $4,000 a month, typically maybe $2 to $4,000 a month for a ghostwriter. Claude, it can do that for $20 a month, and you have to do the editing, the finalizing, but like you save dramatically more time on the front end by using a tool like this. Cool. The last thing I want to talk about before we break for Q&A are product launches. So we did a 250,000, I think it's now something over 500,000 launch for a buddy of mine, Jesse, on a list of what was originally 15,000 people, right? So you're talking, it was a combination of 2 things. This $47 low ticket product for B2B entrepreneurs who were trying to learn how to do more sales and marketing. We also helped them sell a $5,000 accelerator, which is like more hands-on with Jesse for 6 weeks. We actually learn everything that he's done to scale Growth Assistant, which is one of his companies, to $18 million at ARR. He has another one called Ox that's doing 7 figures. He's a bunch of these really cool B2B companies. He's an awesome, awesome entrepreneur. And the core of how we sold those things originally was through really deeply researched, manually written NurtureFlow emails. So there's a very quick example of one here that is more of an objection handling email. So I'll give you a very quick TLDR. We know, for instance, that many entrepreneurs maybe can't see themselves in Jesse Pucci, because Jesse, he has a huge social media audience. He's like 200,000 followers. He's sold a big agency for 8 figures before. Like there are a lot of reasons to go, okay, Jesse, this like sales and marketing playbook you're gonna teach me, I know it worked for you, but like you're invincible, man. Like, I don't know, is this thing really going to work for me? Right. So we needed an email that would address that. And so we wrote this email about one of his co-founders, her growth assistant, Adrian Schwager. And she is a total badass. She's awesome. So she co-founded this company with him. She had never started a company before. She was a new mother when she first started this company, and she came from like an HR, like a recruiting background, right? So a bunch of things that are not typically associated, not traditionally associated with being an entrepreneur. And so we knew that, hey, maybe the reader can't see themselves in Jesse, but certainly they can see themselves in Adrian. And so that was the whole point of this email. And we did a bunch of stuff like that. And so the question that we had for the second cohort that we just launched in January was, well, we spent a lot of time on that. Could AI help? Could it help draft some of those emails and still be really effective? And so we started by giving Claude a ton of information, right? So 3 core pillars of info we were giving it, and the short answer is yes, it was very helpful. But what do we actually do? Well, number one, we gave it all the nurture that we originally wrote for cohort 1, so it understood Jesse's voice, it understood the copywriting strategies, the nurture strategies that we were doing. We also gave it emails from people that we really admire in the space, people like Nicholas Cole and Vicky Bush, because they sell very, very well using email, and we want Claude to actually pick up on those things as well. The second thing that we fed Claude, and this is all in the Claude project, by the way, right? So just like I told you about how for my newsletter, right, project, I set up with my writing, right? This is a project in Claude called, Bootstrap Giants, right? Cohort launch, right? And this is all the information we're uploading. The second pillar here is product information, right? So we uploaded a couple paragraphs around like, hey, this is a 6-week course. It's live. Here are the topics of the 6 weeks. Here are the subtopics, right? We want to give it as much information about how the product actually works, what the features are, what the benefits are as possible. And then finally, we wanted to give it what the customer had told us. And so at the end of our first launch, which everybody should do, we got video testimonials, written and video, but mostly video testimonials from a bunch of folks who had gone through that accelerator. And we transcribed them using a tool called Descript. So Descript is, I don't know, maybe $20 a month or something like that. You can upload really large video files, and it does an amazing job of transcribing them, so you have the full piece of text that occurred in that video. So we put together a Notion that had, all of that for, let's call it 20, 25 different interviews with people who went through that program. And then we uploaded that. And all this allows Claude to understand, all right, how do you do good copywriting? What's the thing we're trying to sell? And my favorite, which is like, I think everybody should think about, how can you make your customer the copywriter, right? Like, how do you just play back what was valuable to them? We're feeding them information about what people loved about this thing. And it helped us draft a bunch of really strong nurture emails. Not all of them, but several of them needed, maybe max 20, 30% changes before they were finalized. There are some where we sort of pivoted what we wanted to do, or didn't like the way it wrote. But you're talking about, again, like us going from what could be a 2 to 3 week writing process to something less than a week, which is really, really powerful in a context like this. And so I want to show you one super quick example. This is the original draft on the left-hand side from Claude. So this is a type of email called a testimonial deep dive, right? So it's how do you go through the transformation of one person, right? The problem they started with, and how this product or service helped them. And so there's a buddy of mine, Fayez, who added $35,000 of reoccurring revenue, that's monthly reoccurring revenue, during the 6 weeks of the program. So we really wanted to walk through his story and the doubts he was going through, and like how this program met his expectations. And if you look on the right-hand side, almost all of the copy is the same, right? We added a photo because Andrew Warner, who leads Bootstrap Giants with Jesse, met Fayez in person. So, we want to add that personal touch. There's a couple things we changed in the bottom half of the email, but if you look at the text on the left-hand side and the right-hand side, it's almost exactly the same. It's almost exactly the same. And so again, this concept of not necessarily letting AI be the full writer, right, for soup to nuts from beginning to end, but like realizing that, again, you now get to, no matter what level you are, if you work for yourself, you work for somebody else, you now get to be senior. You get to be the senior writer. You get to be the CEO of your content. You have somebody for $20 a month, basically, who's junior, who can help you do a lot of this initial drafting, provided, just like you would if you were managing a team, provided you're giving that person, or that a Claude in this case, the right inputs, right? The right context on what a good product looks like, the right feedback from customers, right? The right research. If you could do those things, then it becomes a really powerful force multiplier for things that you're doing. Cool. So that's a nice short and sweet of how we're using AI across the company, both internally and for our clients. I want to do something really cool, which we try to do at the end of these for a brief period, which is, so I mentioned before, I have a private newsletter that we write to a bunch of the largest media founders. Typically for a couple hours after these sessions, we open up that newsletter to people who are viewing this either live or on the YouTube channel. And so what you can do, somebody from my team 5 minutes ago would have just posted a deck on my LinkedIn. And so you can both be added to the newsletter and get the full deck that you just saw here today by either scanning or going to that link, which is just my LinkedIn profile, and liking and commenting on that post. And then someone from my team will send you all the stuff that we just showed today. And that's that. I think we can open up for Q&A.
Amazing. That was great. That was super helpful. Everybody, let's give a little round of applause to Nathan. As always, such a great resource and expert in the space. It was really, really cool. I'm sure there's so many people here who are going to find so much value from this. We have a few minutes of time, so I think, let me check our internal chat, see if there's questions there, and I can feed those to you, Nathan. Jump back in the live chat, studio chat. Okay, cool. So I have 3 questions, and if you answered them, just feel free to reiterate or just say I already answered them. But yeah. I have 3 here, and then if you guys have more questions, please drop them in the chat, and we'll take them after these 3. But the first one that Tony dropped here was actually somebody asking, what was the tool right before you copied and transcribed the UGC ads? What tool were you using there? I actually don't recall what the specific screen was, but maybe if you go back, we can show people what they were referencing.
So it's a tool called Foreplay. So Foreplay, and it's a SaaS tool for marketers. It's sort of like it's sort of like the Facebook ads library, but basically you can drag any content from the webs or like even Instagram, so in the app, and you can save it to basically its own internal database that you have, and it will auto transcribe stuff. And it's also quite good for research. So often, when we want to look at competitor ad accounts, we'll go to Foreplay, and there's typically everybody's ads are live on the Facebook ad library, but when you take an ad down, it disappears. And so Foreplay will have like this sort of evergreen record of all the ads that were uploaded. It's very, very useful for research or doing things like this, which is like, how do you take something that was really high performing on organic social, so reels, organic posts, and transcribe it and actually use it for ideas for copy or transcripts.
Amazing, super helpful. Cool. The next question was, will you be able to, or are you willing to share those Claude prompts after the call?
Yeah. If you jump over to this LinkedIn post that we just made, we'll send you this whole deck. So we'll have the prompts, it'll have all the photos, it'll have the before afters of the copywriting. Everything will be there for you.
Amazing. And just as an aside, we should connect and would love to host, one of those lead magnets. It looks like there's a lot of demand for that. So we'd love to add that to our lead magnet library and partner with you on that, Nathan. Okay, third question. Is there a way to use Claude or any other AI tool to take URLs and summarize them for a newsletter? I have one where I do a roundup of latest news in my niche, but it takes so long to read articles each week and then summarize them. How would you go about that? Because I'm sure that there's solutions to that.
That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure. Like, Sam Parr tweeted about this like 3 or 4 weeks ago, because he was trying to basically do summaries of websites, and he couldn't find a tool that was doing that for him. So I had actually, if you go to Twitter or X and look up Sam Parr and just scroll, it was some tweet within the last 2 or 3 weeks. He asked that question. A bunch of people responded. So I don't know if he ended up finding an answer. Typically, what we're doing right now is, let's say there's like 3 or 4 links that we want to do. We will just copy the content from those links and send them into Claude. So for instance, like I wrote a little bit on the Acquirer technology advice, but I didn't know a ton about them, and I needed to learn a lot about them in basically 60 minutes to do a LinkedIn post. And so there's a tool I like a lot, so I'll do this. Can you still see my
Mm-hmm.
screen? Okay, cool.
Yep.
Let's do this. So there's a tool I like here called Fireshot. It's free, and you download it, and it will basically let you screen capture entire screens. So often I'll give Claude the links, but I'll also give it PDFs of a couple screens, and it will really easily tease a bunch of useful information off of those web pages.
Cool. Amazing. One thing, so I'm, this is like a little bit of a, I don't know, shameless plug, but one of the things I've been kind of side questing on over here at Beehive is a tool that I call Link to Letter, which basically is meant to be like a resource like aggregator where you plug in, you can grab like RSS feeds from around the web, you can grab, using the Chrome extension, you can grab specific links and it basically saves it to your account and creates an RSS feed of those links. And so one thing comes to mind is like if you had like news sites from your niche that offer RSS feeds, you could potentially basically save those various RSS feeds, aggregate them in one place in this app, and then have like a master RSS feed that then gets pushed. You can use like something like Zapier that watches for new items on that RSS feed, and then basically takes that link, sends it to ChatGPT, summarizes it, and returns that that input to a Google Sheet or something like that. The initial purpose of this was so that like folks on our Max plans could like aggregate all of these different news sources and then have like a custom RSS feed to use our RSS to send feature where you can automatically populate RSS content inside a newsletter. It looks like they want to take it a step further and like not just show the links but summarize those articles. Um, that could be a really interesting use case that I build support for. The tool is not ready for prime time at all. It's like just something I built with Replit and like 20 hours of Replit and Cursor and stuff like that. But that's a really interesting use case that I think I could explore a little bit and maybe share with the community at a future date.
Dude, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of the newsletters that we work with are daily, and like, I mean, even Noah for the Neuron, there's a guy Grant who writes it now, but like, I mean, Noah was just he's in college, so he was always writing the new. I mean, there's so much to research for a niche
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people would love that.
Cool. Yeah. And maybe I'll send that to you to get some feedback on because I shared it with a client and they were like, "This is killer. Like, this is amazing." I just have to work on the website. I haven't updated any of the copy, so the copy doesn't really position it properly.
Yeah,
But yeah. Anyway, I'll share that with you. Get you some stuff.
that's awesome.
Um,
You're like Dharmesh, man. It's like Dharmesh is like leading a bunch of tech, and huge initiatives, and then he's like, I've also got this awesome tool that I just made on like the weekend, and it's like
yeah.
really high performing. Like you're,
I mean, I'm making tool
you're
not to
like in your
brag. I'm like
Dharmesh
making
phase.
tools. I'm launching albums. If you haven't listened to the Beehive album, it's called Inbox by Beehive. If you just search Inbox Beehive on any of the major streaming services, you'll see our album come up. 12 tracks, all about the experience of being a newsletter operator. All kinds of genres. We made a little something for everyone.
That's cool.
So maybe I'll drop some links in the chat for people to check that out. But yeah, that's cool. Okay, so moving back to, I don't have any more questions in the private chat. In the live stream, do we have more questions from the live stream? Let's see. Zapier rhymes with happier. Yeah, right. I always say Zapier wrong. I just said it wrong again. Zapier. It's such a
Is it
weird
Zapier or
word.
Zapier? Zapier?
It's apparently Zapier because they have the whole
Okay.
thing that Luis mentioned here. Zapier rhymes with happier, as they say. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
just find a hard time saying Zapier. Um, but cool. I love the reference to Firecrawl. I was actually checking Firecrawl out the other day because I've been using our internal resources like our support docs, our product announcements, our blog, our website, all of these different resources. I've been basically scraping and pulling into custom GPTs in ChatGPT. In Perplexity, you can create spaces where you just add the links, which is a lot easier, to be honest. But like, I found a lot of success with basically building these custom workspaces that pull from like very specific pockets of knowledge. Like in theory, if they're tracking the whole web, like they would have access to that. But when you're able to really focus and say, hey, like pull from this specific knowledge, my results have been way better because they're obviously done through the lens of Beehive. There was an example the other day. I was like just testing out one for like maybe like a support troubleshooter and literally like took in like the most recent support ticket and just put the text of it in there, and it basically returned the most impressive just like technical. It gave like a technical analysis of like what was happening like in our database that caused it, that was causing like the person to not get the result that they wanted, which it was user error. It wasn't like a bug, but it was like, this is, technically this is why, this is the logic and why your logic is not working correctly. Here's a Python script that you could run to query the database. Here's a SQL script you could, and it's like they have no access to the Python or the SQL, but
Sure.
and then
Yeah, yeah.
explained like a solution, explained the steps to the solution, gave like a before and after like analysis of like what the impact would be, assessed like an impact on their like open rates, on their click-through rates, on their unsubscribe rates, on their spam rates. It was super, super impressive. This was Perplexity. I was really, really blown away. Um, so I'm like, I'm a
That's
huge fan now of like trying to figure out how can we find like take this custom data, scrape it into a format that is most efficient for ingestion, and then basically using that to kind of shorten the work streams.
That's awesome, and we've done that a bit for like the Facebook Ads Manager for our creative strategists, just as like they learn certain ways that we like to set up campaigns, and then the other one, which is unrelated to AI, which I still think is quite useful, is I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this, you'll probably have some kind of funnel. Maybe you're selling like a product, whether it's an info product or a physical product or a service. Um, Often we'll use this tool that we were talking about, this like screen capture tool, to take photos of somebody's funnel. It's a little manual,
Mm.
right? You take one photo, you put it in your email. Okay, now next one, you take the next photo, you take an action, take next photo. But you can throw all that, choose your tool, Miro, FigJam, whatever it is. And it's a really nice way to get your whole team or somebody you're working with aligned on how somebody has structured their funnel. Creates better conversations. We've picked stuff up from even now, we have an entire FigJam that I just keep of funnels that we love. And so when a client has a question, or if when we want to try something new, odds are like somebody else has tried that or like figured it out, and so like we return to these funnels to think about all right, what are the best ways that we could approach this thing.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Cool, awesome. Well, it looks like we have, we don't have too many more questions in the chat. Give people another chance to say something. I do like to give this opportunity to plug, the Beehive community. So this is kind of one extension of our community where we interact with our users and try to scale the expertise that our network has, in a one-to-many way. But if this was helpful, one of the resources that a lot of folks are leveraging every day is the Beehive Hive community. It's a private premium Slack community that comes with your Beehive subscription. So as soon as you subscribe to a paid plan of Beehive, you get an invite to the Slack channels. There's literally 20 channels. There's things like monetization, deliverability, design. You can ask people for feedback. You can, basically do organized cross recommendations, and that's just 5 of them. There's 15 other ways to interact. There's like dozens, if not hundreds, of messages a day, and it's just really, really great. So if you found this really helpful, there's stuff like this and people like Nathan in that community who are always jumping in to help. So I like to give that little shameless plug for Beehive in that way. If it's maybe you're on the fence about something, it's only paid. I think it's like 3,700 Beehive customers at this point, only active paying customers. So people who are actually serious and actively building. Really, really incredible place. And so other than that, Tony, if you could drop the link to our upcoming virtual events. We have a full slate over the next month and a half. We have a great summit coming up called the local newsletter summit that's happening at the beginning of April, where we're going to basically have an entire panel, like 4 hours worth of speakers about building local newsletters from people, some like Ryan Heafy from 6 a.m. City, who's built a nationwide network of local newsletters, just absolutely jam-packed with knowledge and tactical advice. And so if you've considered starting a local newsletter, if you are running a local newsletter, I can't recommend joining that one more strongly. And if something maybe you want to add a second newsletter to your ecosystem, maybe local newsletters in your future. Other than that, want to give another thank you to Nathan for spending his time with us today, spending the time to prepare that amazing deck and those great resources. Where can we find you online, Nathan?
Yeah.
I know
Find me on LinkedIn.
I know you had the links on the board a second ago. I realized that after I asked that. Would you mind maybe
Yeah, right.
dropping in the chat so people can just like click through and drop there? I
Yeah.
know I didn't speak too much, but we're always, the whole Beehive team is welcome to connect with people online and off. My name or my email address is ej@beehive.com. If anything here that either Nathan or I said resonated and you want to kind of double click on it, feel free to send me an email. You can also connect on X at ej_beehive or LinkedIn. I'm Edward White, and I have a picture of a tuxedo, black and white. And then we have Nathan's LinkedIn is right there. And if you're interested
My,
in,
my photo's also black and white, no tuxedo. You just got me beat there, but you know, I try.
yeah, definitely follow Nathan. He's always dropping incredible knowledge, on social, as well as just sharing the success stories of the feed media. So yeah, if you're growing, hardly, if any, better resources to follow than Nathan. He's really in the top echelon, which is why we have him here. So thank you so much, Nathan. Really appreciate your time. Thank you, Tony, for eye in the sky, for keeping an eye, keeping the chat locked down. Is there anything you want to add, Nathan, before we wrap up?
No, the local stuff would be really good. I mean, I think the local newsletters are probably the most fun newsletters that you could start because you just like I had one for a while in my city. Heafy's a good buddy. Daniel, who you guys will know on the Beehive team, has a really awesome newsletter down in Charleston. I've never met somebody who has a local newsletter and not kind of had the takeaway that it's it's awesome. Always, you just meet people you never thought you were going to meet by doing that. Is it?
Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Nathan. Appreciate it. Can't wait till next time. We'll have you back very soon. Thank you, all of you, for joining today. This wouldn't be worth it without you guys showing up for the session. So thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to talking with you both online and seeing you in person at various newsletter-related events. Have a great day, everyone. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Find my camera here. There we go. All right, I'm going to